great turnout tonight. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the National Nordic Museum. This is a very special place, and we're going to have some fun tonight and not just celebrate the place, but also a person that's associated with the place. My name is Viggo Forde. I'm the Honorary Consul of Norway, representing the Pacific Northwest. Thank you. So before we start, I'd like to take a moment and recognize some of our elected officials. I'll start by saying thank you for your service. It's a big job to be an elected official in any state, and I'll start with the Honorable Governor Jay Inslee. Thank you for being here. We have Washington State Senator Marco Elias. I saw you out here. Hi, Marco. King County Council Member Jeannie Cole-Wells. We have Commissioner Ryan Calkins from the Port of Seattle. City Councilman Dan Strauss. We also have Director Gail Tarleton, who is the Seattle Office of Governmental Affairs Director. That's a long title. And we have representatives from Senator Maria Cantwell's office, Congressman Larson's office, and Director Tarleton also represents the mayor's office. Since I am the honorary consul, it's proper for me to also make sure that I recognize my Swedish and Finnish colleagues that are in the room tonight. The Nordics is more than just Norway, believe it or not. And of course, we're very excited to have our own ambassador, Anniken Krutnes, who's here with us today. So being gathered here in this hall on this night, it really brings to light how this community has gotten to here, to this place and this building. As you know from this invitation, we're here today to recognize and celebrate Erik Nelson. We would not be here we would not be here if it wasn't for Erik. I'll admit that I don't remember exactly how I met you. What I do remember is your big smile. That's the first thing you notice with Erik is his big smile. And it was way before this building was here. I was gathering a bunch of Scandinavian organizations together for some workshop, and we needed a place to crash. And Erik, of course, offered up the old museum. I'll say this is a little nicer, so good job. It was a great place to start, but your willingness to just share and be open to the community is a hallmark of who you are, so we really appreciate that about you. Of course, he let us use the room, and he didn't even bill us for it, so that's good. It might be different in this building, I don't know. Now, the thing about Erik, he's a very humble leader, and I've heard him say this many times, he is the first to recognize the team. He never talks about himself, he never takes credit for the work that he does. I lead an organization, I recognize that trait, I think it's a wonderful trait, and I agree with that. I also want to make sure that we call out the staff of this museum. The staff is what makes the magic happen, and you're right. But we do know that requires leadership, vision, ability to partner, make friendships, and a whole lot more than that. The results that we're seeing through this incredible institution that you have built here starts with that leadership, Erik. You created the vision, you worked with the board and the community to realize that vision, and then executed it once it became a museum, running it. It's going very well from what I can tell. The local, national, and international recognition the museum receives does not happen without leadership. And all of this is through Erik's leadership and his steering of the ship. I am privileged to represent my home country as your honorary consul. Through that work in the last 4+ years, I've been able to see Erik's work a whole lot more directly than what I did before. And I have seen that leadership. I've seen how he works with his staff and his team and the board, and I understand why we are and why we're here and why we're sitting in this room today. It gives me incredible pleasure to be able to stand here today to celebrate Erik and your work. He has impacted so many people, and his work will forever leave a mark on our community and our city. So to speak more to that, I would like to introduce my good friend, and most of all, former college roommate that many of you don't know, Hans Årehus. Hans is the president of the board of directors for the museum, and he'll talk a little bit more about Erik.
You know, it's funny because when I was writing my speech, I was going to use the college roommate too, but... So as Viggo said, I'm Hans Årehus, I'm the president of the board. In behalf of this institution, I'd like to welcome, our great governor of the state, Governor Inslee, as Viggo said, welcome. And also the ambassador to the United States from Norway, Ambassador Krutnes. And all of our honorable guests, as Viggo mentioned, thanks for being here, as well as all museum guests and friends of the museum. And a special shout out to my niece and their kids from Norway who came all the way here to visit to see this evening. It's great. Thank you. Also, very special thanks to our General Consul Viggo Forde and the ambassador for this very special recognition from His Majesty the King. As a Norwegian, I so appreciate the rarity and significance of this event this evening. And the museum has always had great support from the Norwegian Consul and the consulate, both Viggo and his predecessor, Kim Nesselquist. Thank you, Viggo, for your continued support and the great work that you do in the region, and for all you've done to advance and strengthen the relationship between Norway and the National Nordic Museum. As a Boeing executive, I first met Erik on a study mission to Finland. I wasn't quite understanding why Boeing would send me on a trade study mission to Finland, but the opportunity was there. It was hosted by the Seattle Chamber of Commerce, and we were spending a lot of time in Helsinki together. And right after that, I joined the board here at the museum, and since then has been a trustee, has served as a treasurer for the museum as we were building this building, and is currently now the president. With Erik's leadership and his great staff, we have seen a fantastic transformation during the last 15 years. We have also had a tremendous engagement and support from so many other stakeholders. We could not have built this new museum without all of this. Thank you all. You shared our vision for the new museum, and you all dug deep to invest in the museum's future. I'm sure you will all agree it was a well-worth investment, and you all have a great return on that investment, I think. As a Norwegian immigrant, I feel so fortunate and proud to have had the opportunity to be a small part of this transformation and creation of the amazing National Nordic Museum. Tonight, I'm especially excited for the museum and our CEO and my friend Erik Nelson in receiving this very special recognition. Thank you again, Ambassador Krutnes, and I look forward to the rest of the evening. And with that, I would like to introduce a great supporter of the museum and a great friend of Erik, actually a lot longer than I have been, Marta Kongsgård.
Honorary Consul of Norway, President Årehus, Governor Inslee, Ambassador Krutnes, and friends, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to participate in this historic gathering, whose purpose, of course, is to honor our friend Erik in both the visionary leadership and the backbreaking, leave no rock unturned labor it took over the last 15 years to not simply raise the funds to create a new architectural icon in ballot from a lot of perhaps skeptical, brow-raised and vernufty Nordic elders, but to wholesale reimagine the meaning and scope of museums in the 21st century, taking it from a heritage museum of the Nordics for the Nordics, celebrating the stories and archiving a collection of the tangible heritage of the staggering 30% of the Nordic peoples who between 1865 and 1910 wandered out, utvandring. They who fled the meager farmlands and prospects, either because of primogeniture or gender or religious strife, or the ratio of arable soil to the number of children on a farm, or that brother whose seductive letters from the New World painted a picture of a universe too good to pass up. From that important beginning in the mentioned rented surplus school building under the formidable leadership of Mary Ann Forsblad, to a purpose-built facility, a national, I would argue, global platform for diplomacy, multicultural exchange, and innovation, becoming a museum as thought leader, value disseminator, as cultural examiner, a place that could plumb the 120 centuries of Nordic history that have forged an ethos, and I would add, without sounding too grandiose or braggy or a Norwegian, a kind of moral authority worth examining and sharing in this century. The values of social justice, environmental sustainability, openness and transparency, egalitarianism, innovation. And as a proud Norwegian, and why isn't anybody else wearing a bunad? That's really what I want to ask you. Gosh, that's disappointing. But I digress. As that proud Norwegian, I believe these values are hitting the streets of Ballard and beyond at a really critical moment in our American history. Have these countries ever been more important than they are now? Just think simply about the Nordic contribution to the tech sector, about the politics around a rapidly warming Arctic and who will control it, about seabed mining, let's debate it, about NATO expansion, about the transition to a green economy while equitably managing one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, ironically, with oil revenues. Not to mention the Tour de France, spoiler alert, Vindigo's stage win tonight, I don't know if you know that. And of course, hygge, which is everywhere. These are the values, the examples, the debates that will take us into a livable future if we pay attention. This institution under Eric's leadership catches our attention. It's irresistible and undidactic, timely, celebratory, courageous, optimistic, extremely welcoming to all, and unexpected. Did you see the exhibit Flood? If you didn't, you should after cocktails. But I want to tell you something that you wouldn't know about Eric. That he's been at this work since his youth when he lived right down the hill from the house I grew up in Napa, California, where his brother's 4-H sheep were known to wander. To prepare for this, I've been excavating with childhood friends remembrances of him in middle school, which uncannily reveal the early markings of our present-day CEO. He was 2 classes below me when he came to our social studies group to tell us about Scandinavian culture, about which I knew nothing when I was 15. It was a time when my first-generation Norwegian father was fully engaged in the first-generation American dream and was not at all interested in looking back. Eric told us about the history of Norwegians and Swedes and the rub between them, about their migration and what drove them to the USA, and not just Minnesota, he added, as if we knew anything about it. They make Volvos and they ski jump, he said, then unintentionally eclipsed that very lesson, most notably among the 9th grade boys, with a photo of Anne Margaret, who, he said, without irony or licentiousness, was one of Sweden's greatest exports. He was barely 12, just reciting the facts. So, this very young and self-reported shy kid went on to make the argument for, believe it or not, multicultural understanding, a word new to all of us, including our teacher. Our class historian just the other day recalled the young Eric schooling us like this. Eric articulated, quote, "One day in America, we will have to understand everyone's perspectives. Most of us come from somewhere else. Look at the last names of everyone in your class. Rivera, Katz, Kongsgaard, Majesty. They all come from somewhere else. And we should think about that. It was probably hard," end quote. The mentioned Gilbert Rivera appreciated the term multicultural and also having his Mexican name uttered with no pejorative descriptors that day, a healing moment he remembers to this day. And so who was this child whose character had seemingly been imprinted prehistorically with the values we see in him today? How far back should we go to see the through line that helps explain partially his demonstrable calm and unruffled decency, his deeply innate communitarian sense of justice, his gosh gee whiz wow getting inducted into the Scandinavian-American Hall of Fame, to say nothing of his central casting Max von Sydow Nordic head. The essayist Peter Fong writes that personal history, like the history of place, is a sedimentary affair. One can see the strong Nordic ethos expressed in him in the layers laid down like sedimentary rock across the generations of his Swedish family who came to America in the 1880s and stayed. We're the lucky who have lured him north to help expand this pan-Nordic juggernaut, where he was early on wise enough to ask something like this: can this newly imagined institution give a dispirited and weary nation an example of how to begin to heal a fractured world? The answer is all around us here, where Eric is rightly recognized this evening, in the heart of his gathered Nordic community, where we all say, "Gratulerer Erik, och tack så mycket för allt du har gjort." Tusen tack.
Thank you so much, Marta. Andrew Nestingen, I think you have your future lecturer for one of your programs here at the University of Washington. It's hard to follow that. That was a wonderful speech. Thank you so much. You talked a lot about Nordic values, Norway and Nordic. It's very much the same in my mind. I think a person that in many ways represents a lot of that, as well as his government, is the Honorable Governor Jay Inslee. It's my great honor to welcome you to the stage to talk a little bit about Eric.
Good evening. It is difficult to follow Martha Kongsgaard in any context. Martha, thank you for your comments. I really enjoyed what you had to say. And I am really honored to be here tonight where we have such a distinguished visitor tonight. We have the ambassador from Ballard, Anniken Krutnes, here tonight. And it's a big night for me because, Madam Ambassador, I used to play the Ballard High School team. I went to Ingram, and we lost the most painful loss ever against the Ballard Norwegians. There were a couple Swedes on the bench, I think, but in any event. But tonight I feel we're together in spirit, so we have been united. Eric, I'm really glad you're being honored tonight, and I'll tell you why. I think this museum is a living instrument, not a museum in the typical sense. And here's the reason I say that. The Nordic culture, I am a beneficiary of the Nordic culture that you have made sure people understand and value. And what I mean by that is our state is a very proud state. It welcomes people from around the world. It values our beautiful natural heritage. It embraces entrepreneurship and innovation. And it has a sense of community that invests all of our public policies. Those policies today in the state of Washington came from the Nordic countries. It is the reason we dealt with COVID so effectively in the state of Washington. It is the reason that we have the best climate change policies in the United States. It is And these values that now drive our politics are very much of Nordic origin. So, Eric, what you've done is to tell that story of the folks who gave us that culture. I'm very, it's just so beneficial to myself and our state. But there's another thing that I want to say, and that is about Norway. Trudy and I have been there twice in the last 6 months. There's a lot of things I can say they're great about Norway. We were in Sykkylven, just south of Sykkylven, and we went to the Furniture Museum. I highly recommend it to go to the Furniture Museum in Sykkylven. As you know, that was the primary place for making furniture. And we went over and just visited my 7-month-old grandson. He has a chair from Sykkylven. So this is the highest tribute I can pay to any country that we're enjoying my grandchild's furniture. But you look at what Norway is doing today, and it is so beneficial to the state of Washington in so many ways. Number one, the partnerships we're developing with new companies, Corvus with marine batteries, Atlas Agro, which can give us green fertilizer, Sonata, which is a company looking at Washington State, I hope you'll recommend us, to do some tremendous polysilicate work. The innovative sharing of knowledge is just outstanding at what's going on. And what Norway is doing today with the struggles that we face mutually cannot be overstated in how much I admire this nation, starting with their commitment to fight climate change, getting rid of internal combustion engines, moving to a system of green energy. Trudy and I ran across the first hydrogen facility to fuel cruise ships in Hellesilt, in the most famous fjord in Norway. It's the first time we're going to power ships, major ships, with hydrogen rather than bunker fuel. This is something that they're leading the nation. They're joining Washington State in this regard. And their approach to the world community is something to be so admired. I think it's pretty cool that Norway has the highest per capita acceptance of refugees from the Ukraine war in Europe, and Washington State has the highest per capita acceptance of refugees in the United States. And again, the reason we're able to do that in Washington State is because we've embraced the DNA, if you will, from Norway. So Eric, thank you for telling this story. It's a living thing, and keep that furniture company coming. We'll take it on. Good luck. Tusen takk.
I know you're a little taller than me. I personally witnessed Governor Inslee's engagement with the Nordic countries and Norway over the last year in particular, and I'm very grateful for that. This is a great partnership in general, and we see so many great outcomes that come out of the strength of your engagement in those conversations, so thank you. We're really getting closer to why we're here in the first place. You're not here to listen to all of us. To make this happen, it's no small feat, and I'm incredibly grateful for Ambassador Krutnes for continuously coming to Seattle in general. We chatted in a car yesterday, and she says she's been to Minnesota more. I think we have to change that. It's much prettier out there with mountains and water and things, but the connection between Norwegians and the ambassador's commitment to the Norwegian-American community is demonstrated time and again here in Seattle, so thank you. Ambassador Krutnes is in her 3rd year as ambassador to the United States, first female Norwegian ambassador. To clarify, first female ambassador to the United States. So a little bit of obligatory background on Her Excellency. Many of you have met her, many of you have heard her background. She's an expert in security policy, law of the sea, and Arctic issues. And I'm sorry, I have to read this, I can't memorize this. Ambassador Krutnes has served with the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs since 1994. In her previous position with the ministry, she served as the Deputy Director General of the Department of Security Policy. And before that, she was Norway's ambassador for Arctic and Antarctic affairs. Ambassador Krutnes has had postings in several European countries, including ambassadorships in the Netherlands and Luxembourg. She was recently a member of the United Nations group of governmental experts on advancing responsible state behavior in cyberspace in the context of international security. Interesting area, I think so. She holds a Master's of Law from the University of Oslo, a Master's of Science in Economics and Administration from the Norwegian School of Economics. And she has also studied international management at Università Luigi Boccioni in Milan, Italy. The ambassador is married. She has 3 children. One of them is here with her husband tonight. Welcome, Joachim, Kjetil. It's my great honor to welcome Ambassador Krutnes to the stage.
Thank you for that introduction, Viggo. Governor, dear friends, a pleasure to be here again. I'm not sure it's true I've been more to Minnesota. And what Minnesota doesn't have is mountains and ocean. And I honestly don't understand why the Norwegian immigrants stopped there and didn't go further west. It's such a pleasure to be here tonight, to see all of you, and to honor Erik Nelson. And I will, of course, honor him in a very special way. That's why you're invited here. I will actually be officially decorating him with the Royal Norwegian Order of Merit on behalf of His Majesty King Harald. So, maybe some of you are not very familiar with what is the Royal Norwegian Order of Merit, because it's not very common. It is a high-ranking order. We're a monarchy. The monarch can give the orders and medals he likes to, but there has to be a system of it, and we have a system for it. We have 49 different decorations. This one is ranked as number 4. It's a really high-ranking order. And I looked into some statistics. I was actually sitting last night going through lists of who has received orders and merits. And I would say every year, between 3 and 5 Americans get this one. And chances are, if you're not an army officer or a diplomat, you won't get it. So this is really, really unique. And I will say a few more things about the order itself later, because, as I said, you probably don't know all things about it. But just a few words about Erik, because he is awarded this order because he has performed outstanding service in the interest of Norway. That is the criteria. It is only given to individuals who have performed outstanding service in the interest of Norway. And that is what he has done. And that is, of course, his 15 years here at the museum, where he not only grew the museum, made it bigger, facilitated its move, modernized it, diversified it, and got it through the pandemic, but he also made it a hub for Nordic culture and, as Martha said, for Nordic values and the community. And I like what you say about the moral authority, and that is what this museum stands for. And what I personally like about this museum is that it is not stuck in the past. Of course, we all need to know where we come from. And when we go here, we see where we come from. But we also need to know what we are today. And we can find that here in the museum. And my job is to make sure that the relationship between Norway and the US is as close as possible. We need each other. And we see that today in today's world. We stand together for Ukraine. And we heard we all take refugees. We do a lot more than that together, US and Norway. We stand together here for a green shift. We are taking the transition together. And Governor, I think there's no coincidence that it is in the maritime industry. It is the ferries, the battery for ferries. It's because we're seafaring nations. We live from the ocean, Washington State and Norway. And that link, that close relationship between Norway and the US is my job to foster that and to make it grow, but it is also the job of the institutions, and Eric is the best at that. So thank you, Eric, for doing my job. So then to the more formal part of this, I will read a little bit about this order. The Royal Norwegian Order of Merit was established by His Majesty King Olav V in 1985. And it is mainly awarded to foreign and Norwegian nationals who reside abroad for particular meritorious service in the interest of Norway. According to its statutes, the purpose of the order is to be rewarded for distinguished services rendered to Norway and to mankind. Nothing less. When the Order of Merit was established, its insignia was designed using Norwegian symbols. I will show it to all of you later. The insignia is based on a St. Olav's cross, which is specific to Norway and evokes the country's religious heritage, tradition, history, and the royal house. St. Olav is Norway's patron saint and canonized king. The insignia incorporates a few additional simple elements. The St. Olav's cross is inlaid with a rounded red cross surrounded by 4 royal crowns, with King Olav V's monogram in the center. This links the historic canonized king to the current royal house. The ribbon of the order, it comes with a ribbon. The color is dark blue. It has to be dark blue. And that is because, first, blue is the color of the Virgin Mary, indicating the religious origin of most orders. Blue also represents purity, fidelity, and nobility. I'll start wearing blue, I think. Since the French Revolution, the color blue has also been associated with freedom, liberté, égalité, fraternité. Finally, this dark blue color is known as royal blue, and thus ties the order to its Grand Master, His Majesty the King. So while the Order of Merit is a modern order, its insignia shows that it is deeply rooted in Norway's history, tradition, and culture, while at the same time reflecting values and customs that are held in high esteem far beyond Norway's border. So I will ask Eric if you can come up here. I will shove all of you. This is the diploma. I will give it to you afterwards, but first I will actually decorate you. Oh. And now you have to say something.
Oh my goodness. I'm speechless. I cannot begin to express my gratitude and humility. It's a wonderful honor, not necessarily deserved by me, but deserved by all of you. Thank you for making this happen, and thank you all. Thank you for coming, too. I'm not sure if I'm going to give the mic back to Viggo now that I have it. There's appetizers galore and wine and cheese, and please enjoy the rest of the evening. Again, apologize for choking up. It's a huge honor, and again, I sincerely mean that this honor is really meant for the community that made this new museum happen and provided me with the guidance to actually execute on it. So thank you all for being a part of the journey. Governor, thank you for the great support we've gotten from Washington State. I see Jeannie Cole-Wells, too, that drove a lot of that support with you. So again, we wouldn't be here without that. And Martha, you made me cry. Holy cow. I need to send that to my dad to convince him I'm not as bad of a person as I actually am. Anyway, thank you all and enjoy the evening. I greatly appreciate you all coming out.